All right, let's go. Oh, welcome to the Flow Software community event. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat. Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I am trying to read the chat and talk at the same time. It's really not my strength. So just a note before we start that this is a session that's being recorded. So by just being in this session, you are consenting to being recorded. And my responsibility to tell you this. You are more than welcome to turn your cameras on or off, but if you are in a noisy environment, I would love it if you could turn your mic off. We will have time at the end to chat as well, and at the start we tend to do at least some of that. So, sorry, I don't know if I have lost everyone.
No, we're all here, Taz.
Okay.
But we've lost your PowerPoint.
Oh, my computer's just.
Yep, it's back.
Yeah. Okay, so today is a little bit of a different session. I've been at Flow for just over 2 years now. And in the last 2 years, I've done lots and lots of interviews and chats and feedbacks and sessions with customers. And I constantly come back to how technical our product is, but also how not technical a lot of our customers are. So this session is really about going back to basics about, and also this is the feedback we've got over the last 2 or 3 community events where we've talked a lot about the product, and the more technical people have been all across it, but a lot of our user base is not that technical, and they would really like to kind of start from the basics again. So one of the things that we did notice actually as we've had these conversations over the last couple of years, and in fact, actually it's come about more so even now that the recession is happening, is that all the people I talk to seem to have the same sorts of struggles, where growing business and actually onboarding new customers without being overwhelmed with new work is hard to manage. And these days, customers expect a certain level of technology, service, and that delightful customer experience. So their customer expectations are high, and it's hard to kind of match it. Hiring staff is expensive, and also compliance is expensive, and the compliance needs keep growing, and paperwork keeps growing. And what you think you want to do is we'll get a new system, and that will solve a lot of our problems. But of course, getting new systems in place takes money and effort and downtime, and actually a lot of disruption for training and just staff learning new systems, things like that as well. So I am. The question to the group is, are you experiencing this as well? And this is also your chance to test out the React option on your teams. So let me know if that's working for you.
Yep.
Cool. And really, the thing that I'm talking about is it's not uncommon anyway these days, but with a recession, it kind of becomes even more, comes to a head really. So that's why this session today is less focused on Statelake, the product, and more on what integration is, how some of our customers are using it. So you can see if you have the same issues, you can go away from this session with some ideas and some thoughts about how you might utilize it better, because you've already put in the investment to the integration platform. We will, of course, keep some time to talk about migration, because we know that this is a thing that is on everyone's minds at the moment. You've got Flow, Statelake is out there. How do you make the move? And then there's a little bit of a general Q&A option as well at the end, since we've got Craig in this session. Just note that, again, as we run this session, if you want to add comments or questions, please feel free to add them into the chat at any point in time. A quick introduction for those of us who don't know who we are. I'm Taz. I'm head of product and marketing. Craig?
Yeah, Craig, I'm the CTO.
And you probably guys get a lot of emails and newsletters from me. This is primarily the external contact, but you'll start seeing more of Craig and I as we start doing some feedback for product features that are coming up and a few user events that are planned this year as well. So it'll be exciting to see everyone face to face. So watch out for that in your emails. So let's start with very bare basics integration platforms. What is it? I found this statistic. The average business uses 187 applications according to the 2022 Business at Work report by Okta, but Craig thinks it is bullshit.
I think 187 applications is a lot of applications, and they've included every single app on a user's phone. But I do think that, you know, a business user might be impacted by 20 applications, 10. It's still a lot of applications.
What about you? If you had a guess as to how many applications are used in your business, would you put that in the chat? Craig, I think you should give it a go as our CTO. You have the best overview of
In our business,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've probably got 8 tests.
I use 8 in my marketing stack. So I suspect it's a bit more than that, but yeah, I guess that's 8 mission critical ones, or, you know, if things happen, you don't want them to go down, put it that way. Yeah.
I think we would probably have something in the order of 30 to 40. But like you say, Craig, it's far too many. It's far too many, and none of them talk. Practically none of them talk to each other, unless you put email and Excel in the middle, and occasionally Flow.
It's funny how often Excel gets used as the first integration. Well, yeah, that's the other thing. How do you count Microsoft Office? Craig thinks it's Microsoft Office, but I'm like, but I use all of those things quite extensively. To me, they're all individual apps. Any one of them going down would impact my life significantly. So really, I think no matter what, we do know that these days we just can't get away from having lots of different systems, lots of systems that do different things that are important for our business, that are all somewhat business critical. So what we know that in an ideal world, what we want to do is keep our data in sync across multiple systems, automatically process new orders, inquiries, requests. That helps us free up staff from doing manual work and data entry, and they're able to do more high quality work, more analysis work, maybe process improvement, all that stuff that actually adds value to the business. What that also helps us, let's say, what we also think we want to do is use our existing systems and apps better. We've all got some pretty complex systems, but you know, we're so busy in the day-to-day, we don't even know how we could probably do that better, how we can automate processes, how we can track, how we can do better reporting, how we can keep on top of business and compliance needs, and maybe even use some of those legacy systems better to extend the life of them and ultimately provide a better customer experience. So meet SLAs consistently, provide instant feedback to customers and partners, and have really consistent response and processing times, regardless of who's on leave and who picked up the call and all of that sort of stuff. So that's really fundamental to providing a good experience in employee experience and customer experience, and keeping our business efficient and effective. And this is where, of course, where integration platforms come in, right? This is where we can help. So imagine you have an online store. And I think this is something that most people would be able to at least imagine. You're selling products to customers online. You might use, obviously, you have a web storefront, a website, you have some e-commerce systems, you have a system to manage your inventory, another one to process payments, you have a CRM system to keep track of your customers, you have shipping and tracking. So you of necessity need all of these systems to talk to each other automatically, so your data is always up to date and you can see very quickly how things aren't right. So you're trying to sell something that's not actually in your warehouse, or your customers bought something and then it goes into a black hole, they don't know when it's being shipped. you definitely don't think that those are not the kind of things that leave you with a good customer experience. That's not what you want. And that's where I think the magic of integration comes in. So an integration platform is a type of software that helps all these different custom computer applications work together smoothly. And that's one of the reasons why we call it middleware, because it acts as a sort of middleman between all of these different systems to communicate, share data, share information. And what that also allows you to do is put business rules and processes and automation and workflows in place so that everything can work a little bit more efficiently. And ultimately, what we're looking for is save time, save some money, and help us get a better customer experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how our customers use integrations and then hand over to Craig for some detail. So really lightweight, all of those things that I just talked about. You can synchronize data between all of these different types of systems, point of sale systems, CRM systems, ERP systems, automate, orchestrate, and manage complex business processes, business rules. If you came to our webinar last month with Villa Maria, you might have heard Brett talk about the wine buying rules. Who knew that there were so many rules? Like, not everyone can buy all types of wines. Some wines are reserve wines. They're only allowed to be sold to special customers or fancy restaurants or things like that. So can this customer even buy this wine? What is the price? How much are we allowed to give them? Because for certain types of wine, there's already pre-allocation done. Is it last in, first out, or first in, first out? So some wines age well, but not all wines age well. Some wines you want to get rid of as soon as possible. So all of these types of rules they're building into their system using Flow and Statelake. So these types of things are actually really common. And what that means for them is that their business people don't have to, the call center doesn't have to remember all of these rules. And so what that does reduce costs for them, and it eliminates bottlenecks. There's no, oh, who knows this information and how can we get this order processed? Is Tracy from accounting on leave? All of that stuff just goes away. And these days, there's a lot of businesses, particularly big box stores, your foodstuffs and your warehouse and your Briscoes, that actually enforce electronic communications either via EDI or API with their suppliers and vendors. So if you can't do it, you are not going to win that business. And if you can do it, you will definitely get higher priority at some of these box stores. So it can give you a competitive advantage. And of course, last but not least, enabling your legacy system. So you've got a mission critical in your system. It could be Sightline, Info. There's heaps of those around, right? You've spent lots, 6 figures, 7 figures sometimes into having those systems in your business. And then suddenly they can't talk to modern systems anymore. They can't work with cloud-based or SaaS apps. And so if you had a middleware in between, that extends the life of your existing legacy systems. So this is all of the stuff that I have seen in the last couple of years interacting with our customers. Of course, there's more to this. So Craig, I will hand over to you for this slide.
Thank you, Taz. So I guess the thing to think about with middleware and with Statelake in particular is that there might be lots of areas of your business where we can enable you. So you've got your various core business applications, and you can see there we've got a complete mix. Some of you on the call today might not have a point of sale. You might have no direct retail interactions with customers. Others may not have a transport management system, but you are implementing a business process. You sit in the value chain in your industry, and we can help you move transactional data and sync master data between all your systems. What I'll be talking about a little bit later on is some common patterns from an e-commerce example. But while we're looking at those, we could have equally chosen logistics-focused applications for that example as well. So again, it depends on the areas that drive your business to get value. If you have a very large payroll or a very large staff book, then you might get real value out of rostering, payroll, integration, even keeping your point of sale system up to date with your user list. could be a real benefit for you if you've got lots of locations. On the other hand, inventory management could be absolutely critical to your business. How are you making stock allocation decisions, or how is your transport management system designing optimal shipment routes and that sort of thing? Taz, if you could press the next one, please. Thank you. The other thing to think about is the types of hosting or where your application sits. So just to remind you that we don't, to integrate for you, we don't require that your application sit in a particular spot. As Taz said on the previous slide, we can work with legacy systems. Sometimes all one of your systems can do might be CSV files or SQL worktables. No worries, the middleware can enable that. At the same time, you might have just signed up for something brand new and shiny in the cloud. It's delivered software as a service. You actually have no idea what the hosting is. We can enable you to work with whatever kinds of APIs that system is requiring. They could be single shot APIs, they could be bulk APIs, you could be receiving webhooks. We can be that bridge and that middleware for you, regardless of the different ages and different data exchange styles of the systems that you work with. And lastly, think about different areas in your value chain where you could be obtaining benefit from an integration, from an automation of data. So certainly it could be suppliers and customers, really common. So people doing EDI, electronic data interchange, it's a very old standard from the 70s. It's still really big and powerful, being used all over the world to enable large suppliers. And if you're in a value chain that where EDI is in use, it will be very valuable for you to participate in that. At the same time, you might be in a different industry where there isn't a dominant EDI standard, where you might be the person who, or the party that's saying, look, I can get a benefit. I've got lots of customers, suppliers. I'm going to publish a standard, or I'm going to produce some APIs. If you're in logistics or you're a service provider, you might also get a lot of benefit from being the party that's able to say, don't worry, whatever you need me to do, I can integrate your data into the service that I provide. These are all different styles based on where you sit in the value chain and how you interact with partners. The last thing to think about is that we can also enable you to interact with government agencies. That could be to do with shipments and clearance, customs and clearance. It could even be as simple as, validating tax numbers, or in Australia, ABNs on your customer information as they come in. There are lots of things we can do around government compliance. And I would also encourage you to think about the fact that government themselves are seeing automation and efficiency as critical to the overall economy. Presumably most of you have heard of the e-invoicing push, which was announced by the Australian and New Zealand governments a few years ago. That's a global standard that they've implemented, which started in Europe. I'd be really interested if you dropped a message into the chat if you're currently already using e-invoicing or you're looking to use that e-invoicing standard. Again, that will be, it might be a slow burn because it is government driven and they've gone a bit quiet, but eventually you will see more and more of your trading partners able to support e-invoicing. And of course, we're here to help you to make sure that your systems are able to also play nicely in that ecosystem, so you can be a good player and you can get the overall benefit that you'll get. And we believe that it is going to come a point where if you don't support e-invoicing, you may become less preferred depending on your industry chain.
Actually, just to add on to what Craig just said, if you are either using e-invoicing now, either using our products or even inbuilt into one of your existing products, can you drop a line in the chat? And if you're not using it now, but you intend to use it, you want to put it on your roadmap, or you want to learn more about it, just put that message in the chat as well. We are looking at whether we want to do an education session around this, and also whether we want to enable some out-of-the-box connectors in out-of-the-box formats. Is that the right thing to say, Craig? In Statelake.
I think the important thing to think about is that with the Statelake product, we can integrate to anything, but we've also got choices in the product roadmap about particular patterns or solutions that we might want to enhance support for. So again, where we see a really common data format, we can do some specific development, again, to make your customized middleware configuration easier to set up and run.
Okay, so ideas there. I'll just run through a couple of quick examples and hand over to Craig as well in terms of how we've seen end to end. So you can, if you look at this picture, it's a terrible picture, but you get this technology advantage with the centralized data hub of Statelake. You know this already, you have it. But if you had, imagine you had all of your system connected, that would just give you way more traceability. Your orders are coming in from all these different sources. They're going automatically into your CRM or your ERP. They're getting processed. Accounts are getting updated. Inventory is getting checked. It's getting sent. Your order is getting sent through to be processed to your warehouse management system and then dispatched through your transport management system. Any documentation that needs to be on sent to suppliers or government agencies just happens automatically. And of course, then invoicing, payment back to the loop as well. So we can pretty much automate and make all of this workflow processing, not just ourselves, we've got a bunch of partners as well that support this paradigm. So the other thing, of course, to think about when you go through this process is inevitably there will be issues with data and errors and all of that sort of stuff. But when you have a system that is set up to capture log information, status updates, warnings, notifications, all of this stuff, it makes it really easy to quickly identify and fix problems, which means that you just get better visibility and control of your business and customer data. And that's really what we're trying to do with Statelake, enhance that visibility, enhance that reporting as time goes on. So I'm going to hand over to Craig for some real life examples. Craig, I'm going to be your human clicker. So you're just going to have to say click each time you need me to move on. Okay. So we've got an example of 6 systems here. I will hand over to you. I'll stop talking now.
Okay, thank you, Taz. I believe that that should make you Tinkerbell based on the little books I used to read with an audio tape to go with it. So what we wanted to talk about here, again, as I said earlier, this is an e-commerce retail focused example, but the only reason I picked that was because I got 6 systems to play with. What I really want you to think about in the next few slides is, do I have some systems that have a particular pattern of data integration? So the first pattern we're going to talk about is product and pricing information. And I think of that as a pattern where you have a master system and that data needs to flow out to multiple other systems. So in this example, our ERP is holding our product and pricing information. You know, that could equally be 2 systems. You might have a pricing system and a PIM, but let's say that it's an ERP here. It needs to send to the POS and to the e-commerce system. Keep going, Taz. And to the WMS, because if you think about it, all 3 of those systems use some or all of that product and pricing information that's sitting in the ERP. Okay. The next, so that example there was a single source of data being broadcast in different ways to multiple targets. When we're thinking on the next slide about inventory and stock management, there are 2 systems that own the on-the-ground control of your stock. Your WMS owns what's happening in the warehouse and your point of sale owns what's happening on the shop floor. But that means that your, one more click please, Taz, your ERP and your e-commerce system, which both might need to know your stock position for what you're selling, are both going to need to take feeds that are combined from those 2 things. I'm not saying this is the only pattern to do it, by the way. You know, there's maybe the ERP could feed the e-commerce system after it's done some transformations. But the idea that I wanted to talk about in this example is that you may find within your business sets of data that have 2 sources of truth that need to be combined. They're each authoritative for their own bit of the data. In this case, it's stock levels. And it's going to need to come together and then potentially be published to 1 or more other systems. Okay. Customer and contact information, keep pressing until we got the arrows there. Thanks, Taz. Okay. In in this example, we've actually got multiple systems that might be interested in keeping customer and contact information in sync. Obviously, if this was a more B2B example, we might have, maybe our TMS needs to know the locations of all my EDI customers and keep those in sync for delivery points and that sort of thing. But in a retail example, your CRM is probably your primary master data. Maybe your customers can come in and send updates via the e-commerce platform. Maybe they can go into store and update the POS. It could be direct to the CRM. Often POSs talk via the ERP because they get brought together, but then that means a flow of updates back and forth with the ERP. And maybe you've got a subscription management tool that's also just controlling when users subscribe and unsubscribe to keep that master data up to date. If you think of that as a set of individual integrations, it's actually really hard. Your CRM is designed to be a master of customer information. It's not necessarily designed to manage the coupling of data that goes around. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy. I've seen in the past where an update from one system causes an update in another system, which gets flagged as an update, and you can end up with ongoing loops of updates going through. So the middleware needs to have some logic to say, well, actually, I need to suppress that update. That's not a change that needs to get published back to a system. And similarly, there might be only subsets of the data which a given system is allowed to update. What that probably touches on is an idea where Statelake as middleware plays in a different space to what you might do in a bank or a very, very large enterprise. In a bank, you can customize every application as much as you want. Usually, in lesser organizations, we try and avoid customization, and we try and say the more vanilla I stay, the more out of the box and the more configuration I use rather than customization, the easier it will be to manage the life cycle of my applications as they upgrade and change over time with the vendors that I'm working with. The reason that Statelake middleware can help you with that is it allows you to say, I will talk to each of the systems in your enterprise in the way that best suits it. I won't force you to customize it. I won't force you to get multiple vendors to all write custom API or file integrations. But Statelake, by sitting in the middle and using the unique Statelake design where we can use the stage design to store and forward data and transform, we can actually simplify those things. So in the logical diagrams that you saw before, there were arrows going all over the place. But practically speaking, Statelake would take one feed of information from the WMS, for example, store it, and then be able to forward it in different formats with different cadences to different target systems. Similarly, when Statelake is managing the synchronization between multiple systems using customer data, you're able to say, what are the rules I want to decide whether a given system is authoritative for a piece of information? And when I receive an update, how does the middleware will take care of knowing that that update shouldn't be echoed back to the source system and potentially trigger another loop of changes?
And if you remember, again, last month, Brett mentioned with the Villa Maria system, they are looking at replacing their ERP. So instead of them having to redo all of the point-to-point integration, because they have a central hub there, all they have to do is rebuild the one point and away you go, rather than having to rebuild all the systems that their ERP talks to. And then this is another pattern that's really common that we see in our customer environment. So I've called this slide multiple systems and best of breed systems for a reason. It's really common that there is a business and there's an existing CRM system or an accounting system or an ERP system, and then that business gets merged with another business. Or another example of this is so Volvo is a good example of this. There is a local subsidiary, well, Volvo New Zealand, and there is a global Volvo head office. And the HQ requires that information to be managed in a different system, Salesforce in this example. But that's not always ideal for the local subsidiary. So Volvo has got 11 different sales and service centers, about 80 salespeople that work in those places, and they all use a system called Autoplay, and they have been for many years. So they need to kind of bridge a gap. So, and they want to avoid re-rolling out the same system that doesn't improve business process in any significant way. Local staff need to still use a system that they know and love and is actually right for them. It's best of breed for them. But using that integration layer in between allows them to use both those CRM systems almost side by side, but have the data that they need in the right system. So even if you are swapping out systems, for example, it's actually really good if you're trying to do parallel processing and migrating across one process at a time, or one batch of employees at a time, or one batch of a chart of accounts at a time, to do it systematically and run two systems in parallel without having to worry about where the data is and where's the master source, because the middleware can manage a lot of that stuff for you. So,
and just one last thing I'd add on that previous slide. Even if you don't need to run systems in parallel, remember that middleware could be your answer for migrating the data between your systems. So when you're putting in a new ERP, you might have parallel running. You might have feeds of data syncing up between those two systems. You might also use the middleware to run the migration, because a middleware migration is a package that you can build, test, and rerun. Whereas doing spreadsheet or manual dumps is a process that your team have to be very on top of their game if they're going to manage to do it consistently. And for example, there might be cleanup rules and so forth. Use the middleware. It's a pattern I've seen used successfully many times with middleware over the years, to remove one component of an architecture like this and replace it.
So lots of ideas there maybe for you, lots of options to think about. If you have any questions so far, I'm just going to take a minute here, pop them into the chat. Otherwise, we will move on to the next section, which is about migration. Drink some water in the meantime.
It's a very pale looking wine you're drinking there.
Everything tastes better in a wine glass, even though this is just water.
Even gin.
Okay, I don't see any questions coming through. So, oh no, hold on, Philip.
Yes, Philip. Statelake is available as a cloud platform or installed on your premise.
For that one, do you mind if I just kind of carry on? If there's other questions, we have another option. We have another touch point at the end of the session as well. But actually, I think this is a really good point to jump into what is Statelake. Okay. So you guys have been getting emails from me for at least a year now. Statelake, 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 right? You know some of this already. New integration platform, does everything that Flow does, but better, faster, more performant, etc. But Craig will tell you all the under the hood stuff of what that actually means.
So Statelake is a new product and a new platform. However, our focus in this in the first releases of Statelake has been on backwards compatibility. We want to make it as easy as possible for existing Flow sites to migrate to Statelake and maintain their investment in the configurations they've already built and their investment in training and knowledge that their teams have. So the technical differences that we need to call out to you is it's fully 64-bit. So it can take advantage of more than 2 gigs of RAM if you need to per process to process large data sets. It is significantly faster. I shared in the event late last year, Statelake on one process that I was testing was 40% faster than Flow. And I'm about to run another set of benchmarks, and I'm sure Taz will be excited to share them shortly. That we've improved the performance on and on with that. Now, that doesn't mean we're obviously, if we are talking to external APIs, we're not making those magically faster, but the internal workings of Statelake and how it runs are being significantly faster than Flow. We have the cloud deployment available. If you're interested in the cloud hosting options, please have a talk to your sales and account team, and we can run you through what that looks like and how it works. Native JSON support. So significant in Flow, we had some scripting support. We've significantly improved that scripting support, and we now have support for data definitions working with JSON. If you came to the tech view, that's about enabling your team to be able to work with JSON more quickly and efficiently. So we created a generator, for example, to generate the data sets from sample files. We also have full Unicode support. So again, depending on, you might not think that Unicode is critical in your business, but we know, for example, that people in logistics working with German companies might have to deal with some European special characters. They're not special anymore, aren't they? There's more special characters than normal characters. It's probably the other way around. And certainly our customers working with in Asia, you just expect these days that you will get extended address and contact information as a minimum coming through. You might also need to be doing data feeds that are translated into other languages. And the other thing to remember is you can always bugger an entire process by just dropping a smiley into somebody's shipping notes if they don't support Unicode all the way through to the back end. We've done a lot of work as well around thinking about the security model inside Statelake. We've abstracted the credentials that you store in your Statelake configs out into a separate set of tables so you can manage them more easily. We'll be extending that out so you actually have a wallet and you can manage more carefully the credentials of users. We are also looking to use external secret management systems. First off the rank will be AWS Secret Manager. Talk to us if you're using another secret manager within your enterprise that you'd like us to interface to. And we have a lot of interesting things on the roadmap after we've delivered what we needed to around easy upgrading. In particular, the next release will focus on observability. So if you are currently using tools like Splunk or Datadog or New Relic or other monitoring tools within your enterprise, we would be interested to hear from you now to make sure that they're in our thinking about the sets of metrics, logs, and traces that we're going to make available out of the Statelake system to support you.
Craig, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to wait until the Q&A section to talk through those?
Let's do that. Well, actually, I'll just take the OAuth 2 question now. Yes, Pete, we do have full OAuth 2 support. That is extended onto the transport protocols where it makes sense. So even things like email now, the major providers are expecting to use OAuth for POP and IMAP or SMTP if you're using those for data transfers, and full OAuth support on our HTTP connections as well.
Come back to the other.
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you, Craig.
Brendan speaking. Can I Brendan here?
Okay. So quick update on where we are today with Statelake. So as you know, we launched officially in early 2022. All new sales have been on Statelake from that point onward. So now we've got multiple live customers on Statelake, including customers who are onto their second and third project. We've got 5 projects in flight at the moment on Statelake. And what that means for you really is that it is out there, it's thoroughly tested, it's being used in live, in anger. And what we are now focused on is giving you the ability to use it on your own business. So for the last few months, we've been working on the migration tools so that it makes conversion from Flow to Statelake as easy as possible. So really what this one's about is Statelake for Flow users. What we've tried to, what Craig said before is that we've designed it in such a way that if you use Flow today, it should be really easy for you to move to Statelake. It should be fast and easy if you don't have complex configurations and scripts. But yes, maximum compatibility with existing flow configuration. A lot of the screens and interfaces are the same, so or similar enough that there is very minimal training required. So if you are used to doing things in Flow today, it should be pretty easy for you to pick up Statelake as well. And what that allows you to do is leverage your existing investment in Flow. So typically most of our customers have had Flow for a long period of time, 7-10 years. You've spent a lot of time and effort building out business processes and integrations. You don't want to throw that all away and start all over again. This allows you to move it over and just increase, keep that return on investment just shoots through the roof if you don't have to start from scratch again. But what it also does is that it allows you to start thinking about the future. So Flow is 32-bit, it is old technology. This change will allow you to start thinking about how you can continue to maintain security and business continuity into the future. We have a roadmap, we have a bunch of ideas around new features and functionality. So all of this is what we are looking forward to for our Flow users as they move through to Statelake. So how do you move? Craig has some ideas.
Thanks. I did want to just respond. Peter there asked a great question. What versions of Flow will the auto migration support? You need to upgrade to the latest version of Flow prior to the migration. Again, you just install Flow will automatically upgrade the database. If you are for some reason running an older version of Flow and you have a need to do that, obviously we'd suggest you copy the config database before doing that, and then you can run the migration against that. The strategies I wanted to talk to you to think about in terms of your migration, Flow and Statelake can run happily side by side. So depending on the size of your configuration, you could migrate your entire configuration. We've got customers that we've done that with. We've done that ourselves internally. We moved our internal configuration in one hit, which keeps some of our billing systems and our project management systems in sync. You could also choose to target particular business processes, or you could choose to pilot new integrations. And what I would encourage you to think about here is that the tool is quick to run. It takes 15 minutes to migrate a really big config across. The effort that you will have is in your regression testing. I would expect you to need to, it is a new product. We would encourage you to regression test it and run that through. So depending on whether it's managed by us or managed by a partner, or you're doing the integrations yourselves, you might want to think whether you get best business value from doing a pilot that's tied into a change to an existing business process or a new integration. Because we have focused on the compatibility of the two systems, you can absolutely run them side by side. They can share the same staging database if they need to. That won't cause problems. But you can choose whether you want to take a small nibble to get confidence, to give your team the confidence of what's happened, or whether you want to go big bang, either an entire config within a suite of configs or your entire site.
Obviously, that depends on how many configs you have and how complex they are, and which ones you want to So the other thing I will just point out is that no matter which approach you choose, the project will be run in a very similar way to how professional services works today. The majority of the work is typically in scoping and testing, as Craig mentioned. That doesn't really go away, but the process, it still remains the same. We'll work with you closely in partnership to make sure that we are achieving this win-win on both sides. So start thinking about how you want to address this. And that's our show. But we have time for questions as promised. You should all feel free to come off mute if you are more comfortable asking questions. I see that Philip has a question around, is there an end of life plan for Flow going forward? So the answer is, of course, we are thinking about it. We don't necessarily want to support two systems infinitely in the future, but we are still having those discussions internally, and I will communicate out when that is decided and we have a bare handle on that.
Are you able to give us any sort of idea? Are we looking at months or years, or what sort of
This is a B2B
phase?
enterprise software. We are not
Yeah.
going to tell you, oh, you have 3 months to switch. Don't worry about that, Pete.
Yeah. Microsoft did when they moved to OAuth. No, actually, they gave us about a year, but everyone ignored it until about the
We
last
just
3
ignored
weeks.
them. Yeah.
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 But truthfully, Peter, yeah, we will give you a decent amount of notice, but we're going to put so many amazing features into Statelake, you won't want to stay on Flow.
Yeah, and presumably there's no intention to put any new features into Flow anymore, just supporting existing. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Correct. Yep.
At some point, even when you're building new integrations, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this on Flow? I need to be doing this on Statelake.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I can do a pilot or a proof of concept and just start moving ahead with the future continuity plan, because that is one thing that Flow does not give you.
Yeah. So I asked earlier about as a managed service, is that an offering that you have, or will you mean at the moment just deploy it into our cloud and have it running?
What we do offer either. I guess the conversation I'd be wanting to have with you, Peter, is what are the patterns of systems that we're integrating to? So I think integration as a fully managed service works really nicely if everything that you have is available as a SaaS or online set of APIs that we can just talk to. No worries, we can do that today. If you do have legacy applications, or we need to start running SQL queries against databases and things for you, then I would suggest that you probably want a cloud deployed if you're in the cloud, but your own local hosted copy of the system.
Okay. Thanks, Kerry. Any other questions, team? You all know where I am. Philip said, if we have new integrations we wanted to do, what sort of budget are we talking? How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, so Philip, it would be the same approach as a Flow integration if you were asking us to do it. If you want to, on today's call, we're not going to be discussing license costs or service costs, but please reach out to your account manager. They can talk you through that straight away. Yes, Mark, if you
would you read out the question, please?
Sorry, good point, Taz. So Mark has just asked if they're doing a large conversion, can they work incrementally? So can they export part of a Flow config and just import that into Statelake? The answer is yes. So the conversion tool will either convert an entire database config in one go, or you can provide it with a Flow config export, and you can just convert that file and it will generate a Statelake config export that you can import into your Statelake configs.
So where to from here? Are you going to be running more of these sorts of sessions in more detail in the next few months, or what's your plan?
Actually, what I was going to do next was ask what people wanted next, right? So these sessions are incrementally trying to inform and educate people about Statelake, about the benefits of middleware. And really what we're trying to see is ask you what is valuable to you next. We can, as we build features, naturally at the end of each release, or when we're doing each release, we can do a session on what's changed, what's new, etc. But really, we'd like to hear from you on what you'd like to know more about. And I guess I have a question for you as well, which is, and that's not just you, Pete, that's for everyone in the audience, right? It's that so we've talked to you so much about Statelake, the benefits of Statelake, what options you have for migration, the types of different integrations you can do in your business to enable it. So the questions for you are, did you get any ideas of what you might want to do with your next integration, when you'd like to plan it for? Would you like to do it in Statelake or in Flow? All of these questions are on the table. What you need to know before you can answer yes or no to these questions. And of course, your account managers are always there to help you walk through this with their advice and guidance. So those are the questions I was going to leave you with today.
And if you think up a really tricky technical problem, you can probably convince the CTO to have a phone call with you.
You're talking about new features, etc., that you're adding. At the moment, does Statelake pretty much cover all of the features that Flow has, or is it a bit behind, or whereabouts is it sitting?
It covers all of Flow. There is one feature which we specifically dropped, which I really hope nobody on here would care about, which is support for the legacy version of MYOB that was end-of-lifed by MYOB about 4 or 5 years ago, because Statelake only supports 32-bit. So you can't mix things like ODBC drivers, COM objects between 32 and 64-bit environments. So we support COM objects, we support ODBC drivers, but you need 64-bit versions. If that is a problem for you, let's talk to us about, you know, not that I'm proposing to offer you a 32-bit version of Statelake, but talk to us about the problem. We know that some of our customers in the past have built custom COM objects and may need to recompile them. Currently, the
what question are you answering, Craig?
Yeah, I was about to answer 2 questions. So there's some questions in the chat around deployments between UAT and prod and version control. And the answer is that currently those are the same as Flow. So you can export configs, import configs, and use configuration labels. It is on our roadmap to interface Flow with Git. Statelake with Git. And we'll come back to you with more details on that as we schedule that into a release.
Philip, I'll take your question. You've said that it would be good to have a timeline of the Flow end of life so that you can plan it from a budgeting perspective and even just internal planning perspective. I absolutely take that on board. And we are working towards getting an answer internally with all of our different customers and groups. So we will be in touch. And in not the too distant future. And as I mentioned, we'd like to give you a little bit of advance, and we understand that you do have your own internal roadmaps and budgets as well. So we will be mindful of that for sure. Kerry asks, is the version control logged off? It's on the roadmap. Should I say that?
That was the question I answered before, Tess.
Clearly, I was not.
Yep. Am I right that Flow does not currently have any source control management? It really is just in an environment and then promote it from one environment to the next?
That is not quite true. So actually, Flow keeps a track of every change you make, and you can retrieve those changes. You can also create configuration labels, and you can roll back to a configuration label if you want to. Okay. It's not as elegant as full source control, but it's definitely there. And I've certainly used it in the past when people have needed to retrieve deleted objects, or they've made a mistake that they really, really want to undo.
Yeah.
Okay, last questions, anyone? As always, you know where we are. You have our emails. So if you think about a question after this session, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I will see you all same time, maybe same place. Well, same place, same bat channel. But yeah, a date will be in your inbox this time next month. Thank you for coming along. Really appreciate your participation.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks. See ya.